everyone, welcome to Cellopedia. This is Maxim. This lesson will give you 5 important steps you will need to take in order to master the way to make beautiful shifts on cello. You will learn about the importance of knowing all the notes you are going to play. You will improve your ear training by imitating those notes with your own voice. I will show you how to pay attention to what is happening in between those notes. You will learn how to use different fingerings connecting the notes. And we will discover the very intricate connection between left and right hand when you're making shifts, especially to very high notes. You might be surprised, but it's very common for cello students to think that it's just enough to know fingerings to make a good shift. I believe that it's very important not just know all the notes you are going to play, but to train yourself to think in advance about them. You think about the note and your left hand will find a place to make it just right. Then your step number 1 is easy. Make sure that you know the letter or name of every note you are going to play. So, you've done it. You know all the notes. Now what? Let me ask you, do you like to sing? Like most people, your answer would be probably no. Okay, I understand. But what if I will embarrass myself in front of all of you? Why don't I sing? Today, throughout the lesson, I will be using the example from the first movement of Lalo cello concerto, which might be a bit difficult for you to play right now. But it's not a problem. You could use the same ideas working on a piece of music you have in front of you right now. Let's talk about the first shift. It's from C to C. What could be easier to imagine? But what if I sing it? Lol, lolom. Well, no matter what kind of voice I have, it's quite important to feel this distance. So when I try to imitate the distance between C and another C, I could feel that those are notes which are quite similar in its sound, but there is quite a distance between them. Now I know what kind of pitch should I expect. You can also play those notes on piano, but singing is more effective because that's something you are trying to make. This way you put an extra effort producing those sounds, and somehow this effort stays in your memory for a longer time, and it's much more reliable to retrieve. So when you are making this shift on cello, you always have a good reference in your mind. Now let's go to the next step. We are always concerned about our final destination, and we rarely pay attention to what's going on between the point A and point B. But there are so many quick, tiny sounds in between those two notes. Let's carefully listen to that slide between those two notes. In Italian, we can call it glissando. Very often, cello students do whatever they can to hide this slide. And this slide, this glissando, is something which brings connection between cello and human voice. One of the best compliments you can get as a cellist from your audience is when they say, "Your cello has wonderful voice." And this is something which we spent days, months, and years to develop. And once you feel that you are making all the shifts the way that you would sing, or somebody with a good voice would sing it, then you achieved your goal. Of course, the duration and the speed of the shift depends on the style of music you are performing. Generally, we don't want to show shifts with much of glissando in classical music like Mozart and Haydn, and we tend to exaggerate most of the shifts in romantic music like Brahms, Lalo, or Tchaikovsky. The next step: what is the best technique in the left hand to make long shifts? Well, another very common mistake beginner cellists make is that they try to hop from one spot to another. And sometimes it seems to be very logical. You know the starting point, the first note, and you have some idea about the destination. Maybe you even made a mark with a pencil or even put a tape there, and you happily jump from one spot to another. Well, this technique has few clear disadvantages. First of all, you will never be able to connect those two notes. And second disadvantage is generally it's much harder to find the perfect spot for the left hand. In other words, to play in tune when you are hopping from spot to spot. Of course, there are exceptions from this rule. For instance, when there is a rest between notes or those two notes are on very different strings, so you have no way to connect them. But to make it more clear, in this lesson we will only talk about the instances when you need to connect two notes on the same string. You will need to train yourself to play in such a way that your fingers are in full contact with the string from point A to point B. When you are using the same finger, it's easier. For example, when you have to make a shift from C to F, you press on the string with the same finger, the second finger, and you just move your wrist along the fingerboard. Very often, you will need to change a finger. For example, you are going from one C to another, and you will use second finger for the lower C and the third finger for higher C. You start this shift with the second finger, and somewhere in between the notes, you will add the third finger. Why don't I show it to you in a slow motion? The same idea will work for shorter shifts, for instance, from B to G. And if I make this shift even slower, it will work this way. Working on all the shifts in a slower tempo will serve you really well because you will be able to hear what's going on between notes, and also you will be able to master the way your fingers work. And it is only clear when you play it slowly, and sometimes you might even want to look at your left hand to observe what's going on here. And when you do that, it's not because you need to look at the final point, but rather to pay attention what's going on with your fingers in between those two notes. This short lesson would not be complete without talking about relations between the left and right hand when you are making all the shifts. You might think, why to make it even more confusing? It's already hard to find the spot with the left hand. I will make it to sound. Somehow it will happen. Well, if you don't consider what's going on in your right hand, you might end up in a situation when you spend hours and hours mastering this difficult shift, and when you have to perform it, it will all of a sudden squeak really badly, and all of your work will be wasted. Let me play for you the same shift I played before from C to C, and I wonder if you will be able to notice something strange. What happened? My left hand was just perfect. Well, we need to blame the right hand. Well, it turns out that it is extremely important to consider the position of the bow, the playing point, the point where you are touching the string in relation to the bridge. The distance between the playing point and the bridge has to be shorter and shorter when you go to the higher positions. To give you a clear example, I will play C major scale starting from C in the first position. Pay attention what's going on here. I will try to adjust the distance between the bow and the bridge according to the position my left hand is in. I'm sure you noticed that I started that far from the bridge, and by the time I played C 2 octaves higher, I was playing almost at the bridge. If you make a mistake with the bow placement, considering the distance between the bow and the bridge, then in the lower positions it will sound like this. A bow is too close to the bridge, and we'll get a sound which we call in Italian sul panticello. And if we play much higher note, placing the bow too far from the bridge, as if we play in the first position, we'll get a sound like this, which doesn't even have a name in Italian, because we never want to make it. It's quite tricky in this short lesson to explain what is exactly happening with the bow when you make a long shift. But let's just start paying attention to the placement of the bow. And no matter what your skill is, no matter how short or long the shift you will be making, you will find the way to adjust the bow position. You need to try to do it in a different ways, listen, and according to the sound quality, according to the style of the music you are playing, you will be able to find the best balance between your left and right hands. If you made it that far through this video, you might be interested in checking out my cello courses on Udemy. There you will find different courses depending on your current skill, and you will always be able to improve it working on very important scales and some of popular cello pieces from student repertoire. I shouldn't forget to mention that there is a link with a special discount to YouTube audience in the description. Thank you for watching, keep playing cello, and I hope to see you again on Cellopedia.